incoming President Bongbong Marcos at the National Museum in Manila. Military bands are holding marching practices. Workers are painting metal grills and seats, welding metal parts of tents for VIP guests, and cleaning the surroundings from time to time. Aside from its beautiful architecture, the National Museum of Fine Arts has been a witness to some of the country's historical events. This is where Manuel L. Quezon held his inauguration as the first Commonwealth President under the United States. Historian Xiao Chua says the museum's neoclassical architectural style looks the same as the U.S. Capitol, while its Greco-Roman columns symbolize power rooted on Western democracy.
Parang paalala siya na pinattern sa Amerika ang inyong demokrasya at ang nabigay sa inyo ng demokrasya ay ang mga Amerikano. Para siyang reminder of our colonial past.
The National Museum is also where Jose P. Laurel was sworn in as president of the Japanese-sponsored Philippine Republic in 1943. Chua also notes that the Marcoses have personal memories at the National Museum. He says this is where Bongbong's parents, the late Ferdinand Marcos and former First Lady Imelda, met for the first time.
Doon nagkita si Imelda Romualdez na kumakain doon. Siya ay pamangkin ni Speaker Daniel Romualdez, bumisita lang doon, at nakita siya nung congressman ng Ilocos Norte na si Ferdinand Marcos.
The historian also says students held huge protests outside the venue during the first quarter storm in 1970, when the elder Marcos delivered his fifth State of the Nation address. The National Museum housed the Senate and House of Representatives at that time.
Yung mga alaala ng mga protesta, ng mga pagigingit natin ng kasarilan, yun ang sisidlan, yung gusaling yun. Kaya napakahalagang gusali. So sana hindi sayangin ng mga manunumpa.
Most importantly, Chua is hoping the structure would serve as a reminder for those who will take their oaths of office to not repeat the mistakes of the past. Rex Remitio, CNN Philippines.
No reprieve in sight for motorists with another fuel price hike taking effect tomorrow. Diesel prices will go up by 1 peso and 65 centavos per liter and gasoline by nearly 1 peso per liter. As for kerosene, motorists can expect a 10 centavo increase. Now, this marks the 5th straight hike of diesel and kerosene prices and the 4th for gasoline. Energy officials say a weak peso against the US dollar is keeping the local fuel costs high. Motorists in Metro Manila should brace for heavy traffic in Quezon City as authorities conduct repairs southbound of the EDSA Kamuning flyover. George Quiles walks us through the measures in place to ease traffic.
Motorists should allot longer travel time if they are passing through the southbound of EDSA Kamuning in Quezon City. With the closure of the flyover since Saturday, the traffic became much slower, with only 2 lanes of the service road passable. Add this problem to the soaring fuel prices.
Saan ba kayo usad sa sir? Simula saan?
Simula Mesentris.
Okay. Sir, alam mo ba na ganito ang sitwasyon dito ngayon? Nasarado itong flyover?
Hindi po.
Grabe yung traffic boss, hanggang doon, dulo.
Alam mo ba sarado itong
Hindi po sir, ngayon pa lang daan dito eh.
Ay, sobra, lalo na galing na Commonwealth. Alas wala na natitira sa kita.
Alam niyo ba sir nasarado itong...
Alam ko, kaya lang dito yung pasahero ko eh. No choice ako para siyempre hatid ko siya eh.
The Metro Manila Development Authority has deployed around 100 personnel to the area to manage the traffic and direct motorists towards alternate routes. Currently, vehicles coming from EDSA Quezon Avenue may turn right at Mother Ignacia Avenue, Panay Avenue, Scout Albano, or Scout Borromeo streets to avoid a traffic jam. The MMDA has also posted alternate routes on their social media accounts.
Kung hindi po nila kaagad nakita itong ating abiso, pagpaumanhin niyo po, konting pangunawa, wag po tayo magsiksikan, magbigayan kung maaari dahil yan po yung mas mapapabilis yung takbo ng mga sasakyan.
Authorities say it may take them a month to finish the repairs, but they promise to try their best to finish earlier. That's if they will not find further damages on the flyover and if weather permits. George Ahiles, CNN Philippines.
Coming up on Newsnight, outgoing Vice President Lenny Robredo introduces the new face of the opposition to the incoming Marcos administration. And crash landing on new stars Sonia Jin and Hyun Bin are expecting a baby. You're watching CNN Philippines.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni bay. SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni bay.
Ito ang RPN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKT 1071 sa inyong mga radyo, ang Radyo Ronda sa Davao.
Welcome back to CNN Philippines. Again, our top story, the country will see another change in leadership on Thursday, June 30th. Preparations in full swing at the National Museum in Manila, where President-elect Bongbong Marcos will take his oath of office at noon of June 30. While the threat level remains low, security officials taking no chances. Senior correspondent David Santos reports.
Heavily armed police units carrying out a simulation of a violent attack at the Rizal Park on Monday as part of the final rehearsals for the June 30 inauguration. Several blocks along the streets leading to the National Museum have been barricaded since Sunday. These include parts of P. Burgos and Taft Avenues, Finance Road, and General Luna Street. Several civilian and military trucks have also been stationed just outside the museum. Also on standby, special teams like the SWAT and counter-terrorism units that specialize on chemical or nuclear attacks. The gun ban now in effect all over Metro Manila until July 2nd. In a radio interview on Monday, the police say they are deploying more than 9,000 personnel, while the Coast Guard have started patrolling the water, including Manila Bay, to ensure the security and safety of those involved in the inauguration as well as the general public.
Ang instruction ni Admiral Abu ay maging vigilance sa lahat ng aspeto nitong kadabigan para hindi tayo malusutan kung sakaling may magtatangka talagang manggulo at gumamit ng karagatan at ng Pasig River.
Protest actions will only be allowed at the Liwasang Bonifacio in front of the National Post Office. Demonstrations outside this area will require permits. Violators could be arrested despite police assuring maximum tolerance.
Sabi ko nga marami pang pagkakataon para iyayag nyo yung inyong kalugin. Pero nakikiusap kami na napakahalaga dito ang activist na to, napakahalaga dito gagawin ito, magpapalaga ito sa history ng ating bansa. Huwag nyo naman sanang sirain at ipakita at ipahiya ang ating bansa.
So far, there are no plans to close down public spaces like Rizal Park, but public movement could be restricted, especially in areas near the National Museum. Like Manila, the PNP is hoping adjacent cities will also declare a non-working holiday on Inauguration Day to allow people to stay home and avoid being inconvenienced by the massive traffic rerouting arrangements. David Santos, CNN Philippines.
3 days before he steps down from office, President Rodrigo Duterte attends the oath-taking ceremony of his son and other newly elected government officials in Davao City. Sebastian Baste Duterte took his oath of office as the next city mayor. His mother, Elizabeth Zimmerman, and sister, outgoing city mayor and Vice President-elect Sara Duterte, were also in attendance, along with other family members. Just yesterday, President Duterte delivered what could be his shortest speech yet before thousands of supporters who gathered at the Quirino Grandstand in Manila to mark the end of his term.
Sambayang Pilipino, maraming salamat sa inyo.
Over a dozen performers sang the president's most loved songs at the event, which was entitled Salamat PRRD. The concert also featured a drone show and a fireworks display. As Vice President Leni Robredo also prepares to step down from office on June 30th, the opposition leader passes on the torch to the next woman who will rise to become the highest elected official from their ranks. Anjo Alimario reports.
You are now the highest elected official sa opposition. And lahat kami masaya na ikaw yung natitirang humahawak ng ating bandila.
After her loss in the presidential race, outgoing Vice President Leni Robredo relinquishes her role as the leader of the opposition. Another woman will take on her role, Senator Risa Hontiveros. She was the lone opposition bet who made it to the Senate Magic 12. Robredo praises Hontiveros for using her position to give voice to the powerless and for pushing for good governance. She's confident Hontiveros will continue the opposition's cause.
Andito lang kami lagi magsusuporta sa iyo. Kami yung mga sundalo mo na ngayon, Sen. Risa. Kaya asahan mo yung aming kung paano mo sinuportahan yung buong sambayanan ng Pilipino. Ganon din yung suporta ang aasahan mo lahat sa amin.
Hontiveros says she'll still work with Robredo, other opposition leaders, parties and movements to redress the inequality on the ground.
Pararamihin natin ang mga Pilipinong nakikibahagi sa proseso ng demokrasya upang maramdaman ng mas marami pa ang mga resulta nito.
Like Robredo, Hontiveros will fight back harder against disinformation. She even issued a warning.
To all the dubious characters in the fake news universe, this time we will not let your reckless disregard for truth slander our democracy, our country, ever again.
With just 3 days before Robredo steps down, her staff are busy emptying her office. Artworks donated during the campaign have been packed and segregated. Some will find a new home in her museum. Others will go to a fundraising event during the launch of her Angat Buhay NGO. Anjo Alimario, CNN Philippines.
A first-time senator is taking on the chairmanship of the Energy Committee amid soaring fuel prices. Senator-elect Raffy Tulfo says he also wants to be part of the Blue Ribbon panel. But for the outgoing Senate President, neophyte lawmakers like Tulfo should take it slow. More from Amor Santos.
Ganda. Tama-tama yung height. Okay.
Incoming Senator Raffy Tulfo gets a feel of the session hall where lawmakers deliberate. It was his first time to visit the Senate on Monday, 3 days before assuming office. He was briefed by the Legislative Department and toured the Senate building. He's also taking a 2-week crash course at the UP National College of Public Administration and Governance. Tulfo is poised to be chairman of the Senate Committee on Energy, a pivotal role amid rising fuel prices.
Nag-gather ako ng team of experts sa energy industry para pag-usapan yan, para bigyan ako ng guidance. Unang-una talaga, tatama sa sikmura ng ating mga kababayan ay yung tinatawag na systems loss, yung pagtaas ng kuryente, yung palaging brownout.
Tulfo says the panel will tackle the suspension of fuel excise tax, and incumbent committee head Sherwin Gatchalian will be his vice chairman. On the requested ayuda for the middle class,
I don't think so. There are data na nakita ko na 8 million Filipinos are still receiving below minimum wage. Yun dapat ang targetin natin ng ating pamahalaan na mabigyan ng ayuda. Yung mga nasa poverty line, wag yung middle class. Middle class can take care of themselves, I'm sure.
Tulfo is also set to chair the Committee on OFWs. He also wants to be part of the Blue Ribbon Committee, saying he has investigated erring government workers through his radio program for the past 2 decades. But as a broadcaster, he's not keen on raising the issue of press freedom with President-elect Bongbong Marcos.
Napakababaw mo niya. Bilang senator, I'm representing the whole nation, no longer the press, members of the press.
Other incoming senators will have an orientation here at the Senate on Tuesday. Outgoing Senate President Tito Soto has this advice for neophyte lawmakers.
Know your place. Pakiramdaman mo mabuti ang ikangay sitwasyon doon sa Senado. At huwag mo nang sugod na sugod. Mas magandang makinig ka muna. Pag-aral ka. And then practice due diligence.
Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
It's not yet the end of the road for the joint oil and gas exploration deal between Manila and Beijing in the West Philippine Sea. Chinese officials say they're ready to work with the new Philippine government for negotiations. But as Tristan Odal reports, experts have different views on whether the Marcos leadership should revive the joint exploration talks.
The termination of the joint oil and gas exploration talks with China under President Rodrigo Duterte could give President-elect Bongbong Marcos a clean slate in terms of exploring the resources in the West Philippine Sea with other countries. Experts and diplomats say the challenge now is whether the next administration will continue to engage Beijing and find a common ground without compromising the Philippines' sovereignty. The Chinese Foreign Ministry says it is looking forward and ready to work with the new administration to advance the negotiations. China maintains that the joint oil and gas deal with the Philippines is, quote, the right way to manage maritime differences. In a virtual forum, the Asian Century Philippine Strategic Studies Institute denounces the termination of the deal.
Giving it no say in the consequences thereof. The incoming president must, and we expect, will stand up to this travesty.
In a tweet, Foreign Affairs Secretary Teddy Boy Locsin Jr. says the government must look back at what happened in the 3-year negotiation before giving the talks another shot. He adds details are important so that the deal will not be unconstitutional. Former DFA Chief Albert Del Rosario says Marcos should appoint foreign affairs and energy officials that are upright and patriotic. Del Rosario also cites the need for the Philippines to find energy sources. Fishers Group Pamalakaya wants the Marcos administration to shelve the talks on joint gas exploration with China. But for maritime expert Jay Batong Bakal, the Marcos administration can always make a fresh start.
As long as the Duterte administration did not make any kind of apparently clear, binding, or legal commitments, then they can start fresh. Okay, so they can deal with the question of joint development from the very beginning, from the very basics.
Experts say it is important for the incoming Marcos administration to learn from the negotiations conducted by the Duterte administration to determine the parameters set by China. It is also important for Marcos to set some conditions and maintain status quo should negotiations resume under his watch. Tristan Odalo, CNN Philippines.
Officials are still waiting to find out if the Health Technology Assessment Council will approve a third dose for healthy 12 to 70 years old. That's amid lower booster vaccination among the elderly. Doctors already warn of waning immunity from primary vaccines, and early scientific findings say getting COVID again could increase health risks. Caroline Bodkin has more.
Alfie Ignacio had COVID infection in October, yet months after recovering, his body seems weaker. He gets more easily tired than usual, affecting his work as a delivery rider.
Hindi ko natatapos ng buong araw na biyahe. Sa ngayon, konti nakaka-recover naman na.
He's extra careful now not to get COVID again. A preprint study in the U.S. shows reinfection increases risk of death, hospitalization, and having at least one lingering effect of COVID infection. Authors said preventing reinfection is crucial. Other experts have yet to evaluate this study. While its points are valid, vaccine expert Dr. Nina Gloriani notes this study has not accounted factors like patients' medical condition. Infectious disease expert Dr. Jean Solantes says chances of reinfection and long COVID complications are higher among unvaccinated and unboosted. Solantes sees long COVID more in his elderly patients. Most common symptoms are fatigue and forgetfulness. Some get depressed or have difficulty sleeping.
This long COVID can also be dangerous and can complicate into other possible complications like heart attack, like stroke.
He says a second booster will prevent risk of reinfection and eventually complications in the heart and respiratory system among high-risk individuals. And for general population, a second booster. Solantes stresses the need for second-generation vaccines with improved effectiveness against new and emerging variants. Current vaccines are only based on the original SARS-CoV-2. So even those who had COVID before or are fully vaccinated can get infected with Omicron and its subvariants.
As long as these vaccines, we're using first-generation vaccines, there will always be breakthrough infection.
A WHO interim statement on June 17th points out the importance of using vaccines designed against Omicron as booster shot as it offers more protection. Omicron, with its subvariants, is a currently circulating variant of concern worldwide.
Nag-e-evolve si virus. So we are not just looking at Omicron. Ultimate goal na what we produce next should capture all, even yung future variants.
Vaccine makers are tweaking their formula to have Omicron-specific vaccines. Moderna recently announced its Omicron-containing booster shot showed superior antibody response against Omicron and fast-spreading subvariants BA4 and 5. Caroline Bongkin, CNN Philippines.
Entertainment news coming up. More BTS members embark on solo ventures, with one getting ready to release an album and another visiting Paris Fashion Week. More after the break.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni bay. SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni bay.
Ito ang RPN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKT 1071 sa inyong mga radyo, ang Radyo Ronda sa Davao.
You're watching Newsnight. In K-pop, J-Hope of BTS unveils images for his first solo album, Jack in the Box. Pre-orders open today. The first single for the album comes out July 1st. Hobie will be the first in the group to release his own record since BTS announced a break earlier this month. K-pop fans also abuzz about these three Korean stars who graced Celine's menswear show for Paris Fashion Week. Lisa of Blackpink, V of BTS, and actor Park Bo-gum went to the event together. Lisa is a global ambassador for Celine. And on-screen to off-screen couples, Sonia Jin and Hyun Bin, are expecting their first child together. Yejin shared the good news online, saying they will take care of the precious life that came to them. The Crash Landing on You stars got married in March this year. And that is it for now. Join me again on news.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pio Hontiveros. Before we go, take a look at how a major automotive company hopes to achieve carbon neutrality for one of its plants by 2035.
In 2015, the Toyota Motor Corporation, based in Japan, launched the Toyota Environmental Challenge 2050. As part of this challenge, Toyota Motor Philippines embarked in a renewable energy initiative for its manufacturing plant in Santa Rosa, Laguna. Now, Toyota Motor Philippines has announced that their manufacturing plant will be carbon neutral by 2035, pulling forward the original goal by 15 years.
Toyota Motor Philippines is a manufacturing plant and we are responsible for CO2 emissions. No? That's why we embark on these challenges, which is actually mandated also by our principals in Japan. It's a continuous process. We started with 1 megawatt last 2018. And today, we are also inaugurating 0.5 megawatt. This is just an addition to the existing facilities that we have done. No?
Under the renewable energy pillar, Toyota Motor Philippines is increasing its solar arrays capacity to further its renewable energy utilization and reduce its CO2 emissions by as much as 1,400 tons CO2 per year.
This will help the country reduce our carbon emission for a sustainable future. And it also helps, of course, our need for fuel because this will be additional source of fuel that will reduce the need for the grid power.
Having a global icon in the automotive industry like Toyota speaks a lot. We are hoping and hopefully that Toyota is starting to, or has started a trend in their transition to green energy.
We also encourage our suppliers, no, to do the same, even our dealers. No? So it's going to be joint effort among Toyota Group, so not only Toyota Motor Philippines. Yes.
With this initiative, Toyota Motor Philippines continues their drive on the road to plant carbon neutrality. I'm Jamie Harrell, CNN Philippines.